Hey, You-est You listeners. This is Julie, and you guys are in for such a treat. You have no idea. I'm talking to a sister from another mister today. This is going to be an amazing conversation. I'm so happy to introduce you to Carolyn Colleen. Carolyn, my beautiful dear friend and wise woman, I'm so happy you're here, and I want to just share for a moment about you, if that's okay.
Yay. Yes. Thank you for
Yay.
having me. I'm so excited.
We're so excited. So Carolyn is a fierce mother of three. She is an author. She's an international speaker. She has her PhD. She's founder of the Fierce Academy. She's a life and business strategist. And she is one of the kindest, most gracious, generous women I have ever got the pleasure of being around, getting to know and love. And I'm so excited. You have quite a story, Carolyn, that I know anyone listening is going to be better off in their life after hearing you.
Well, thank you, Julie. I am so honored to have you in my orbit. And I'm glad to be here with your audience. And I just want to be able to share, and I hope to provide some inspiration. So thank you. Thank you.
Woo.
So
yes.
To give a little bit of background about me, yes, I am a fierce mother of three. And with all the different things that come along with my title, some people would say, well, great, good for you. Well, actually, my story, it makes me quite excited to share the different journey that I've been on because of when people see me, or they hear about, where I am today, they're quite surprised to understand the background. And so when I grew up, growing up in a household of love, but confused. Mm. So the love within my household was a bit confused. And I grew up learning that love was the abuse that I received sexually from my teenage neighbor. Mm. Now, this started at age 4 and continued for the duration of time that I lived next door. Now, as you can imagine, enduring that type of stress at a young age, keeping secrets and really trying to define what love from another person meant. And that definitely confused my definition at a very young age. I also grew up in a home with mental health. My mother had challenges with mental health, and she tried, and some days were great and some days were really not so great. My mother, out of love, very much so tried to help other people who were down on their luck. Mm-hmm. And she would invite homeless or people who were down on their luck into our home. And some of those people, they were very grateful for that love shown with a warm place to sleep and a warm meal. And, my mom, she was very giving in that way. She had a wonderful heart in trying to give to people. We didn't have much, but she still gave of it, and with good intention. Now, there were some people that appreciated that and some people who sought to abuse it. Mm. And I have a little sister who's about 8 years younger than I. And I very quickly learned to hide my sister within our home, in which to save her from the people who were looking to abuse us. Mm-hmm. And so, being that I was the older sister and that I was the protector, I would hide my sister from these strangers and I would offer myself in her place. So I grew up that further skewed my definition of love, in that people, strangers who were seeking to further sexually abuse, and that I was, the protector of my sister. Yeah. Now, along with that, we grew up in a hoarding type of family environment. So my mother, because of some of her challenges, she also hoarded. So we had a lot of hoards of things in our house. And that's also an environment that's stressful to grow up in. Now, combining that sexual abuse, there was also emotional abuse because of my mother's struggles. Now, my dad, he worked on the road and he was gone quite a bit. Like, we lived separate for quite a while, and he was home maybe for 24 hours and then he was gone. So he wasn't aware of a lot of the things that were happening. And so basically we were raised by my mother, my sister and I. Now, with that skewed type of definition of love, as you can imagine, I kind of tried to figure out what love meant. And as a teenager, I had my first boyfriend. And as some of us remember, that young puppy love, it was great. And it was kind of an escape for me until we broke up. And when you're a teenager, you think, oh yeah, it's going to last forever. And then it doesn't. And so combining that skewed definition of love that I had, along with the stress of being a teenager and the stress from home, I found myself in an emergency room surrounded by providers seeking to pump my stomach of the 25 sleeping pills I took in which to try and numb the pain. And after my 72-hour hold as a teenager, I came home to my sister, who was very angry, of course, that I tried to leave.
Yeah.
And I promised her that day that I would never, never try to leave again. Because sometimes, when we're wrapped up in a lot of our own stressors, we might not realize that we are a shining light to someone else, and our life itself is not only our own. So I promised her I'd never stop. I'd never try and leave again. But it didn't mean I stopped running. And I ran right into the arms of a man who defined my self-worth. Now, I became pregnant and I got married. Now, within my definition of love, I learned to really become what my husband required. And he required 5-minute check-ins. So I was at the verge of losing my job because he would call in 5-minute increments, 15-minute increments to check and make sure I was at work. Wow. And he would also wait for me outside of work. I worked in the mall at a retail place in the mall, and he would sit outside and just kind of watch to see what customers I would talk to. And at that point, I didn't really understand that, what love was. And there were many, many endless, sleepless nights of him trying to provide me feedback on how to be a better wife. Very scary, provoking evenings of how I could be better and how I wasn't serving him in the way that he wanted. Now, my daughter was born, and she was born colicky. Now, she screamed for 2 months straight. And for those listeners who know what colic is or don't know,
that's rough.
It's rough.
So rough. God.
Yeah, it's unending crying, and doctors don't really know why. My gosh. And you just kind of have to try and get through it. Now, my daughter had been crying for 2 months, and on top of combining, the sleepless nights of feedback from my spouse, I was at the end of my rope. And at 2 months, it was about 4 a.m, right before the sun was coming up, and I prayed, please, someone, anyone, send me a sign, because I can't handle much more. And what am I doing? Help me. And in that moment, my daughter stopped crying, and she looked me in my eyes, as if she's looking into my soul, and she was saying to me, I'm your sign. And I got goosebumps, and I realized what true love was, and that was unconditional. And I also realized in that moment what true love wasn't, which is unending self-sacrifice and suffering. So I knew I had to make a choice. I knew I needed to do something. I didn't know what, but I knew I wasn't going to continue the circle and the cycle of abuse. And I went back and forth. I struggled. I didn't end up leaving my relationship immediately. It took me a year of struggle, back and forth, back and forth. Should I stay? Should I go? Maybe if I'm just a little bit better, maybe if I mashed up the ground beef for the spaghetti a little bit smaller so that he really liked it. All these little things that I thought, if I could just be a little bit better, maybe he would be a little bit, better too. So I struggled with that until I really stopped to think, okay, what does it look like 20 years from now when my daughter, she starts dating and she starts looking for a spouse? And statistically, when you're raised in a family of emotional or physical abuse, you tend to pick the same.
Yeah.
Statistically, it's a high amount track record to continue the cycle of abuse. And at that point, when I visioned that, would I be able to give my daughter away to her father, someone who's just like her father? No. So I made that choice to make a jump, and I did. And that's where I found myself standing in line at the Salvation Army with nothing, not knowing where my next meal would come from, terrified. And I knew that I wanted to be the person that my daughter could look up to one day, and be a strong advocate for my daughter and be someone she looked up to. And so I needed to figure out a way, and I did. I figured out a way. I figured out a practice that I call Fierce Formula, which I practice 5 minutes at a time, in which to reset and refocus. And I used that in which to put myself into school. I worked about 60 to 70 hours a week while raising my little sister, helping raise my little sister, because my mother, she ended up leaving and didn't come back. And so I helped raise my little sister when my dad worked on the road, and I raised my daughter with no child support. And I pushed using Fierce Formula, in which 5 minutes at a time to reset my mind and continually push forward on through my undergrad. I used the same method as my life. I found that I had to borrow the love that I had from my daughter until my own self-love caught up.
Yeah.
And so I continually pushed and continually used that through advancing my career, through continually going through my MBA and then onto my PhD. Now I use this method very differently out of survival, where it was invented, to today, where I help thousands of people break free from their own self-limiting beliefs and their own adversities, and really turn what's holding them back into fuel to push them in a positive direction.
Wow. You're a fierce one, and I want to talk about it, but I want to just say, first, acknowledge you. I'm sure people listening in, just thinking about this, any one of those things that you experienced, just, you started out with sexual abuse from a neighbor, right? And then a mother who's mentally ill, hoarding, having homeless people come in and abuse you, taking care of your sister, not having your father. You've got like 8 things there that each alone would be incredibly challenging for, I feel like, any human being. And it's just, and for those tuning in, because I've gotten to really know Carolyn, and every time, even from day one we met, and I was like, who is this powerhouse, beautiful soul? Like, you really, what's amazing to me is the amount of work you've clearly done to be so grounded and clear who you are today, and to be living completely as a, someone who's inspired and empowered, and have used that, as you said, as fuel. It's quite incredible. And that alone, just pausing to say, hey, acknowledge you, beyond, I don't even have the words to acknowledge you, other than it's incredibly powerful to hear what you've moved through. And it kind of reminds me, sometimes, look, someone cuts you off in traffic, it's a rough morning, maybe you ate too much the night before, whatever's going on, right? Your child yells at you, or you yell at them. It's like, those are normal stressors, but it's like, you really, I'm thinking about it, between going to Salvation Army and raising your daughter and your sister and getting your degrees and then an advanced degree. I mean, it takes something to do that. That's incredible. Yeah. And I want to hear, so I'm assuming like what you use now in this fierce formula, like I'm assuming that you said it came out of necessity, like you had to find a way to move through. Can you walk us through a little bit what it stands for, how you use it, like how you use it and what it is today?
Yes. So yes, it was seeded out of survival. You know, when you're struggling with not only, overwhelm, fear, anxiety, I was afraid of the unknown. I had nothing.
Right.
And I didn't really know how I was going to provide for my daughter, where I was going to go, and how was I going to achieve being someone that my daughter could look up to with my past. Now, being a sexual abuse victim, and also, I had physical and emotional abuse as well, peppered into my childhood. I flashbacked often, and there's certain smells that would, put me right back into a moment in time. And, that's debilitating when you're trying to do something better. And you don't really know what that is. Right. All I knew is that I wanted to be better. Now, a very well-meaning person said to me, "Hey, Carolyn, it's okay. You got that. You took the first step. You could just go one day at a time, one day at a time." And that's a beautiful concept. However, when you're struggling and you're trying to break free out of the things that are holding you back, it is way too much. A half day is too much. 2 hours is too much. And I had to break it down. I found that I could keep concentration for 5 minutes. Right. So I could breathe. I could think about one goal, and I could take an action for 5 minutes at a time. I could keep my mind clear. I could keep focused for 5 minutes, because really, when you think about it, there's things that we don't want to do every single day, but we still do them.
Right.
And now when you think about some of the things that you really, really don't want to do, like sometimes we avoid, sometimes we procrastinate, but we can muster up enough courage and power to do something for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you keep your eye on the goal for 5 minutes, you can do it. And so that's what I did. I took just 5 minutes. I took a fake it till you make it. Keep that smile on my face so that my daughter realized that, everything is okay. And I would push forward 5 minutes at a time and really just focus on the goal, focus on getting a job, focus on getting a suitable place to live, focus on, okay, what's my next goal? So then I was able to actually reverse engineer and think, okay, what does it look like to be a successful mom? What does it look like to be a successful person? What does it look like to be someone that my daughter would look up to? And I could make those bigger goals because I was releasing myself 5 minutes at a time to be able to clear the air, clear my consciousness. And so the method that I created was really breathe, take a deep breath, because when you're deep breathing, you're able to just really clear your mind and get control. That deep breathing. Because what happens is a lot of times we hold our breath.
Yeah.
And I know you teach this, Julie, so I don't have to go too much into it because your audience is already well aware. Like the deep breathing just really clears your mind and it helps you focus. And so deep breathing, then focus, just one thing, one thing, because we have 200 things. What about this? What about that? Wait. And then it holds us back and it keeps us from actually accomplishing anything. So just focusing on one thing. So for me back then, the one thing was to keep a positive mindset, because kids can break it down. They can tell if you're, if you're not really there. So
for sure.
Keep that positive mindset for my daughter, so that she would be at ease to know that everything's okay. Now today I use it in many different ways, different focuses, different goals. Like, when you're picking what to focus on, you can think about, is it a week goal? Is it a month goal? Is it a lifetime goal? And you can choose many different ones. But for me, it was starting at that one space
Yeah.
And then you can continually build. So breathe and then focus. And then the last part is called fierce action.
Mm.
And this is unique because it's taking the things that are holding you back. So for me, I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of overwhelm, anxiety, those emotions that can keep you small, that can keep you immobilized, almost like paralyzed truly from
Yeah.
moving forward. And I had to figure out a way to really harness that,
Yeah.
harness the anger, the fear, the overwhelm in which to launch me in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I would find myself just in the middle of a flashback or, just truly immobilized to the point where I didn't want to get out of bed. And I was suffering from situational depression, of course. And I needed to work through that, in which to push forward. I needed to hone the depressive feelings,
Yeah.
those emotions, and use it as fuel. And when I used it as fuel, it pushed me forward, and I
Yeah.
could continue 5 minutes at a time. So it was breathing, focus, and fierce action. So that's my fierce formula. And people remember it by saying BFF, your new best friend forever.
I love it. Oh, I love that. That's
Exactly.
awesome. I
And
love
repeating it over and over. And that's how you reset. So I have people who use it in many different ways, and I use it in many different ways. So for example, when I have a meeting or a coaching call or back to back, you can get back to back all day, and taking just 5 minutes to reset. So taking a deep breath, focusing, okay, what is my next call? What is my next meeting?
Yeah.
And then my fierce action is really, okay, I need to be able to be inquisitive. I need to be able to be present. All right. So with that breathing and that focus, my fierce action is truly be present, reset. I've got this. Same thing with moving forward with harnessing social anxiety. I have someone who shared how they've used this method to harness their social anxiety, and really taking a deep breath.
Yeah.
Taking that, hey, I need to be able to focus in my business. So I need to be able to network. So I'm going to take that social anxiety, use it as fuel in which to push me in the direction of further networking, getting on those calls, getting in those public venues in which to get and increase your business. I've had high school students share with me on they using it for bullying and getting through the day. Also, I've had cancer patients share with me how they use it in pushing and fighting through their cancer and getting the power to continue to fight. And I have, entrepreneurs who've shared, like, okay, I use this because I need to make 30 calls in sales, and it's at 2:00 and I still have 20 more calls to go and I'm tired.
Right.
I know that self-limiting belief comes in, those negative self-talks come in, and using it to take a deep breath, reset, re-identify the goal, and push forward outside of that negative self-talk, outside of, getting through that goal and resetting and pushing, taking that procrastination piece or that self-limiting belief piece and using it to ignite that fuel of ferocity and push you in that positive direction. Because there's many directions I could have gone. I could have chosen a completely different direction, and I don't know how many people might have blamed me for that, but I chose to take that, all those things that were just bothering, impeding on me, and using it as fuel. And that gives me the choice, that gives me the power, and it pushed me from being a victim into a victor.
Goodness, I love it. I love this for so many reasons. I think what I love too is the simplicity, like being able to remember it and the acronym, but also just, I know this works and it's changed your life. I almost got this image, you think of a windmill that takes the wind and it harnesses it and makes it so that it turns it into power. And I got this image of like, you're taking these feelings that could be very troubling and difficult and could take you off course. It's what happens with many of us. And you're like, okay, how am I going to harness this to get like the most out of it that's going to help me and that's going to serve. And that's really, that's like mastery level / incredible. And I think anyone listening here, because I'm all human beings, we all experience, times where we don't want to make those extra calls or we're exhausted or whatever's going on. And I love this idea. It's funny, as somebody, not funny, but somebody I always talk about openly, I struggled with food addiction. I've been part of 12-step world, and we do talk about one day at a time. And I remember feeling at times like that was way too much. And I would do 1 minute at a time or 5 minutes at a time. And this is so bite-sized. I love how bite-sized it is. It's really, and the most incredible thing, everyone listening, is, okay, if you met Carolyn, you wouldn't believe that this is your background. You come across as, you're one of the most grounded, calm, peaceful, generous, kind, wise women I know, really. So clearly, this has helped you. And it's, I know it's really important to you. Tell a little bit, where people, for anyone that's interested to do your Fierce Academy, how do they find you, find that, get involved? I know it's an amazing program you've put together, and would love to share. Where can we all find you, girl?
Yeah. So yes, I created my Fierce Academy, and this is something that my audience and followers had asked for specifically in order to be able to connect with other fierce women, leaders, and learn some of the tools that I've used, and then also learning how other people are using it, and then supporting each other and helping each other push forward into their next level of fierce evolution.
Nice.
And so, as you shared and talked a little bit about, like you shared about how not very many people would know or my background by first meeting me, and I found that as my definition of love evolved, I evolved.
Yeah.
And so it's my Fierce Academy is a fierce evolution. We're continually growing, we're continually learning. And what are those things of really recognizing where you've been, so that you can further grow into your future. And so I've continually learned to evolve and see the things that happen to me as happening for me, and being in that space. So for example, growing up, with a mother who struggled, I have a rather than coming from a space of anger, I come from a space of compassion. I'm able to see and kind of be grateful for that experience, because I can see that everyone has a story. Everyone has something that's going on in their life that, from the outside looking in, you might not be able to know. So there's many different occurrences that have created my gratitude for the things that happened to me and turning them into how they happen for me, and our continuous evolution. So the way that we challenge, the way that we show up in the world, and coming to peace with the things that happened, because they just happened. They don't determine where I'm going. So and it's all a choice. So how people can find me and really get to know more of my community is at my website, carolyncolleen.com. And I'll leave for you the links for my academy as well. So it's carolyncolleen.com/Fierce Academy.
Nice. And we'll have that in the show notes. And I always add all that with the links. And then we'll share also for everyone listening who's part of the email list. You'll be able to find Carolyn many ways, because I want to make sure you're out there. You're you're like a heart-centered badass. And you really, you are a BFF to me, but I love this new BFF acronym. And I think I love what you said, just kind of we get to choose, and it's what's happening for you, not to you. It is, I look at that all the time. That has been a game changer, I know, for many of us. And you're really living proof of what's possible when you decide to choose in a way that takes you out of the victim seat, like you said to Victor. And victory is all over you. But what I love, seriously, you just your generosity of spirit, and it's infectious, lady. I'm so honored. I'm so grateful you were here today. I know everyone listening in is just gonna fall in love with you. Can't not.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And it's interesting because if you were to ask me even 15 years ago, 15 or 10 years ago, the viewpoint and the vantage point that I had from there, and you would say, hey, what's the gratitude that you experience with things that you've experienced in your life?
Yeah.
And I would have laughed. I would have said, yeah, right. But again, evolving, continually evolving.
Yeah.
Living your life to your fullest.
Love it. I love it. Well, thank you. We love you. And thank you for being an inspiration to everybody.